1.3 turnovers per game forced last year, 80th in the nation, number 11 in the Big 12. 2023, they forced 1.9 per game. That was top 10 in the country and second in the Big 12. And in 2022, they were top 20 in the country with 1.8 turnovers forced per game and number 1 in the Big 12. So top 2 in the Big 12 in 2022, 2023 fell to number 11 in takeaways per game last year. So have to be better there.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Three Ma. John Kurtz, Derek Young, Cole Manbeck with you as we preview the K-State defense heading into the 2025 season. Excited for that. A lot to cover here. Probably more question marks on this side of the ball than on the offensive side of the ball, but we'll cover them all. And it's all leading up to, obviously, the season opener in Ireland coming up on August 23rd. Another reminder, people, come join us. Come hang out at Holiday Distillery. Great friends at Holiday Distillery. They are going to be setting up a watch party for us for the game. It's $25. Doors open at 10. But that $25 not only gets you a live pregame and postgame show, gets you the opportunity to talk to Cole and I, but you're going to get tastings of Five Farms Irish Cream and Holiday Bourbon. You'll get hot dogs and hamburgers from Batchelder Family Farms. A lot of great stuff. Plus a welcome cocktail. So that includes cost of a drink. You know how Cole reminds you, like, you know, you go to Vegas and it's like you want to get into certain places, they make you pay for your first drink there, but it's not, I assume, Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. So, you know, much better in this case. And Cole is usually not waiting for you. You know, I mean, you may be going to some fun places in Vegas, but there's not going to be Cole there.
Oh, you're really hyping me up. I would also throw in, John, so 20 and under, because obviously not of the drinking age, $10 ticket to get in. It's only $10. Okay. And then if you have a child 5 and under, they get in free. So you can go on the link and get them a ticket, I believe, where it's free or $10 dependent upon the age. So for some of our, you know, younger listeners that want to come out, you know, Brody's going to be there, and you know, that'll be something that you can do.
Well, Cole, I was trying to be respectful of the first lady of Three Ma and not mention that anymore. So that's why I steered away from that and put all the spotlight on you.
She's on a work trip. She won't hear this. So, you know, she never listens to the show. But yeah, I mean, she's repeatedly said to not use Brody as a prop, you know, and a tool in terms of like the Brad Underwood buyout sign of you and me at the Big 12 tournament a few years ago, et cetera. Where Kevin Keatsman somehow thought he was like a 12-year-old kid and thought it was like a legit sign that he made. That was hilarious. But yeah. So Vanessa won't find out.
Okay. All right. Well, just have it be known, everybody. I tried to play by the rules here. For real, though, it's going to be a great time. We're really looking forward to it. Obviously, we'll be nervous wreck before the game, but that'll probably be fun to see. You know, take some of your nerves off, not only with some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon, but just with us. Let out that nervous energy with us. Okay, we're talking defense today. Definitely more question marks on this side of the ball than on the offense, where you got a lot of returners, and not that there are not returners on the defensive side of the ball, but you know, Austin Romaine is drawing a lot of headlines as a guy who could be a potential All-American. Obviously, you know, VJ Payne's been around for a long time. There is plenty of experience on the defensive line, but you wonder a little bit about the upside there. Overall, as a unit, DY, with where they've been at the last 3 or 4 years, which has been generally pretty good, you know, solid to good is what the defense has been. Do you feel like it's tracking to be another solid to good defensive unit this year?
I would lean that way, though I wouldn't say it's like a stone cold lock or certainty. I like the idea of the defensive line, and I think in terms of generating a pass rush, I really like the interior of the defensive line when you have both Damian Ilalio and Uso Seumalo back. You kind of you wonder if they have enough like bona fide like stars there, or if they're all just solid. Although if you have that amount of depth in the fourth quarter, they've become more than solid just because they're a lot fresher than the guys they're facing. So that could come into play. And maybe that's the strategy and the philosophy this year if no one really rises to the occasion in terms of going from pretty good player to one of the best in the Big 12. Gun to my head, I think that they need someone to kind of get into that category or at least in the discussion for me to be completely blown away. But it's definitely the most depth the defensive line at K-State has had since I've covered the team in 2017. And it's probably not really a debate. They've had better players on the defensive line, obviously. Felix Inudike-Uzama obviously comes to mind. But in terms of just the amount of guys that are ready, this is probably easily the most. And if we're talking maybe about a scheme change going away from the 3-3-5, it really makes me feel even better about the linebackers because you have Desmond Purnell, who's played a lot of college football, and Austin Romaine, who could be an All-American. So the back end is where you maybe have some more questions than answers. But there's a chance it still upgrades over last year. We had high expectations for the secondary last year, and quite frankly, they kind of fell flat as a whole.
Yeah, that's where you get into the Jordan Riley discussion, right? Keenan Garber had his struggles. Jordan Riley came in, Ball State transfer. He really struggled. Yeah, he was basically unplayable at different stretches of the season. So, he struggled, and it only takes Parker on our Discord always says it's a weak link system. It only takes one or two guys, and you've said it too, DY, to break the whole thing down on the back end of the defense. And that's where they had a lot of issues last year, which we'll get into on this show. But look, you lose Austin Moore, who led K-State in tackles in 2022 with 85, had 10 tackles for loss. 2023 led the team again with 63 tackles and 12.5 tackles for loss. And then he was third on the team last year with 63 tackles. I mean, you combine it, guys. Austin Moore, heck of a player, 29 tackles for loss and 211 total tackles over the last 3 seasons. Brendan Mott, the defensive lineman of the year, gone, recorded 49 tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss, and led the Big 12 with 8.5 sacks last year. And then Jacob Parrish, obviously a third-round pick in the NFL draft, was fifth on the team with 50 tackles, led the team with 7 pass breakups. You lose Marquise Siegel, another NFL draft pick who was fourth on the team with 60 tackles. He also had 6.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 3 pass breakups. And in 2023, he was second on the team with 63 tackles and tied for the team lead along with Parrish with 9 pass breakups each. So you're replacing 4 really good players there. Now, as far as a high-end talent perspective, I don't think you have anyone like a Jacob Parrish on this team, or maybe even a Marquise Siegel from a pure talent perspective. But you have more depth, possibly, like DY mentioned. I think you are deeper on the defensive line. And, if you look at who you return, Austin Romaine, 96 tackles to lead the team last year, 7.5 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hurries, 2 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles. And BJ Payne, the second leading tackler on the team, is obviously back. As a team, you return 23 of the team's 35 sacks. So you have 66% back there, and you return 55 of the 85 tackles for loss, which is 64% returning. So maybe not the star power in terms of names, but maybe by the end of the year, you have some star power by name.
Yeah, and VJ Payne is good enough to be a day 2 pick, which is what Jacob Parrish was. Marquise Siegel was a day 3 pick. So I would say that the stardom in terms of star power in the secondaries, there's potential there with VJ Payne. And some of the plays he made last year are plays that guys in the NFL do make in terms of just closing the gap, that closing speed. There's not going to be a lot of safeties in college football that possess the amount of closing speed that VJ Payne is. And now he gets to probably play the strong safety position, which is more suited to his skill set, even more than probably what the Jack has been in the past. So I would say that there is potential for star power, maybe even so. They need someone to come through on the defensive line, but we were probably having the same debate last year, and then Brendan Mott came through.
I mean, that's kind of the thing. I think we've talked about that before. They have found a way to produce a guy on the defensive line, seemingly in kind of every iteration of the Climate era. But I do wholeheartedly agree, DY, that they need somebody to be that. I'm here for, hey, it's great that they got depth. We've heard great things about Chidi Obiazor for a while. We've heard great things about Jordan Allen for a while. Obviously, Ryan Davis has been hyped up this offseason and throughout camp. Toby Osunsami, we love the potential that we see there with him, but someone's got to break through. Someone's got to break through and be a total stud. I think this is, to me, somewhat comparable to the receiver discussion, although it doesn't have as much history behind it because, like I said, they have had guys pop on the defensive line. But it's sort of like I do need to see it before I believe it on the defensive line that they have one that's capable of being consistently disruptive. I guess I would put it like that.
K-State's had the Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year 3 of the last 4 seasons.
You know, John, that's a great point. Yeah, last year, K-State 7.2 sack percentage, which was 43rd in the country. It was the highest in the Kleiman era, excluding the pandemic season. So they got after the quarterback more. They had 35 sacks last season. But when you look at who's returning and how it kind of breaks down from last year, you mentioned Chidi Obiizor, 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Travis Bates, can he take a jump? He had 2 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss last year. Toby, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Ryan Davis, 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss. Cody Stufflebean, 2 sacks, 3.5 tackles for loss. So it's all kind of divided up equally. You don't have that guy coming back with 6, 7 sacks with 8, 9 tackles for loss from last season. But you have a lot of guys that if they take a jump and take a step, they're capable of getting after the quarterback up front. Damian Ilalio, obviously a really good nose tackle, defensive tackle, and then Uso Seumalo expect to take a jump this year as well. I was going to mention this, guys. What's so interesting about K-State's defense under Joe Klanderman is in the ESPN SP Plus rankings from Bill Connolly. Since 2021, K-State has ranked between 25th and 34th nationally defensively. So they have been consistent to the point that you made at the onset of the show. And K-State ranked number 24 nationally in Brian Fremo's FEI rankings last year. They were 16th in 2023. They were 14th in 2022, and they were 21st nationally in 2021. Well, look at the forecast for 2025 because Brian Fremo's FEI rankings just released today. And K-State's ranked 16th defensively. Or I'm sorry, actually, K-State's ranked 20th nationally defensively, second behind Utah, which is ranked number 9 in the country in FEI defense. Kelly Ford has K-State's defense ranked 26th nationally for 2025, second behind Utah. And ESPN's SP Plus has K-State's defense 26th in the country and second in the Big 12 behind, you guessed it, Utah, which is ranked 16th. So every analytic and metric out there, and they differ. Like the FEI ranking formula is far different than what SP Plus and Kelly Ford uses. They all have K-State as the second best defense coming into this season behind Utah.
If K-State is the second best defense in the Big 12 this year, they're probably in Arlington.
Yeah, I was like, I don't look, I've got faith in the defense, but that seems a little too rich for my blood at this point, based on all the question marks that are here. But it's encouraging. I mean, it's encouraging, especially when you lay out the history and how they have been faring with Brian Freema as of late.
It would essentially say that this K-State defense this year will be the best one since the one that won the Big 12. Essentially, I mean, it could be better than last year's just because the secondary really dragged them down. But
yeah, I mean, you think about obviously Felix, Julius Brents was on that defense. I mean, Kobe Savage was on that defense.
Eli Huggins.
Yeah. One thing to be cognizant of, guys, is last year DY you had mentioned, and you were correct, that the defense was ahead of the offense coming into the season. Although the Tulane game made me question that at different points with the way the secondary miscommunicated things, and that was a debacle for much of that game. But this year, the defense, Iowa State right out front, and you got to get going early in the season, right? Well, the opposing offenses that K-State faces in the Big 12 are really darn good. And KSU fan had a really good graphic on Twitter that he had posted on social media. K-State's opposing offenses that the defense will face average out to rank as the 11th toughest in the country this season. Second toughest in the Big 12 behind TCU, whose offensive opponent ranking is number 8 nationally per Kelly Ford's offensive ranking. So you look at it like K-State plays Texas Tech, who's number 9 in the SP Plus offensively nationally, and number 10 Kelly Ford's rankings. Now the FEI has them 51st nationally in the offensive rankings. You got TCU, which is regarded in all 3 of those metrics as a top 20 offense in the country. Baylor 21st, and 26th in those 3 metrics. KU, the FEI has them 13th in the country offensively. So you could question that.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I know. Well, you look, they were number 11 last year, John. I mean, and I know they lose a lot. So
Cole, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but I was going to push back on this because I would start looking at this, and it seems like last year, if you did this, like, yeah, Baylor and TCU, great offenses. Now, I think they're still going to be very good this year. But Colorado probably scored very highly last year. They lose Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. We'll see what that's going to be. Texas Tech, I mean, Taj Brooks is gone. A lot of the transfer pop that they have is on defense and at least on the lines. So, and Baron Morton's still playing quarterback. We'll see how that goes. Kansas, yeah, the entire receiver room is gone. Like, you lost Devin Neal. I don't look at that schedule and think murderer's row in terms of offenses that they're playing. I think they've got a murderer's back-to-back games with Baylor and TCU, and I think Iowa State, like, we'll see. But again, they lost two of the best receivers I've seen play in the Big 12 in the last decade.
It's an interesting debate because I would say Iowa State this year will probably be a defensive-minded football team. Texas Tech this year will probably be a defensive-minded football team. So, and those two kind of jump out. Now, TCU and Baylor, for sure, offenses. KU, I don't know what to expect. I think they'll probably overachieve this year. Leipold seems like a guy that's not going to have them down for much. So, that's a team that could probably outperform their expectations, but to how much, I don't really know. I will say you play Colorado late, they might have their stuff figured out by then, offensively.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an understood point that you guys are making. I think it's a good point to call out.
Utah could be better in offense for sure. They have 2 first-round picks on offensive tackles.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think you expect Utah to make a jump. You also, though, probably expect UCF to not be nearly as good offensively this year, though, again, this is where the numbers differ across the board because the SP Plus has UCF as one of the worst offenses in the Big 12 coming into the year, number 57 nationally. Kelly Ford has them 55th nationally, but the FEI ranking for 2025 has them 23rd in the country, which I'm not on board with. And look, no model is perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
They lost RJ Harvey. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting that, like, all the models, like K-State, an extreme amount. In fact, the FEI overall rankings came out today, and K-State number 17 in the country. This is not just specific to defense. Iowa State, the second best team in the Big 12, number 22 or number 23 in the country in the FEI. And then Arizona State, interestingly enough, number 27 nationally, which, again, we saw the top 25 coaches poll come out this week and, saw Arizona State at 11, K-State at 20, Iowa State at 22. So, it was interesting and just adds to the hype of that game in Ireland because you got 2 top 25 teams.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa State, I just think you're going to get a defensive-minded team from them this year. I mean, with the way that their roster is kind of assembled, and Matt Campbell will probably even lean into that even more than he should. He's kind of that kind of coach, sort of like Chris Kleiman. If he has a better defense than an offense, he's going to coach that way. So,
let's close the book. We talked quite a bit overall here, but also quite a bit about the defensive line. Two other things I was going to mention on the defensive line. One, Uso looks great. Looks like he is, like, in the best shape that we've seen him at in his time at K-State, which helps provide some depth, obviously, at defensive tackle with Damian Ilalio, but also Ja'Shawn Ross. All right, kind of a wild card there with that group on the defensive line. We're sitting here talking about, hey, can somebody pop? How much talent do they actually have? I mean, Ja'Shawn Ross was about as talented a defensive end that out of high school, anyway, in terms of the pedigree that K-State's ever had. So, Alabama transfer, what are the odds that he makes an impact?
You just don't hear his name much right now, and you do hear a lot of other defensive ends. Even Jordan Allen got some pub yesterday when I spoke to Buddy Wyatt, and that wasn't someone that was getting a lot, and obviously Cody Stufflebean too.
I shouldn't leave him out. Yes, Cody Stufflebean is going to be there. I feel like we all kind of like know what Cody Stufflebean is.
I don't think he's going to start. I don't think they're planning this for him to start, but he's going to get a his veteran leadership and experience out there at times. But I think it's going to be tough for Ja'Shawn Ross to kind of peek through. I think he'll be a very meaningful fixture in 2026. And I don't know that even when they signed him that they thought, like, boom, it's going to happen in 25. I think they did probably sign him with the idea that they knew 26 would be more likely.
Yeah, I'd love to see him on the field. I mean, from a pure talent perspective, it's all there. He was a top 100 recruit. He's not far removed from that. He was a hell of a player in the KC metro area. But to what DY said, like, we don't hear a ton of buzz. I was kind of pressing DY and others recently. Hey, like, what's the hype on Jay Sean Ross right now? Because, candidly, I would love to see a package of Tobias Insomni and Jay Sean Ross on the field on a 3rd and 8, getting after the quarterback. But I don't know if that's in the cards necessarily this year, or maybe at the start of the year. Maybe Jay Sean Ross pops midway through the season. He is still just going into his 2nd year of college football after a redshirt year at Alabama. So we'll see there, but I would love to see him from a talent perspective. He can really get after the quarterback.
Yeah, agreed. It'll be a pleasant surprise, icing on the cake kind of thing if they get much out of him this year. Okay, well, K-State does have one guy that's being pegged as an All-American by many. We'll talk about him coming up next.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
I'm BJ Kissel, founder and CEO of KC Sports Network. Emprise Bank has been with us from the beginning. They were our first network partner, and they believed in the vision of what we were building from the start. I can't speak to any other banks or companies and how they operate, but I can tell you from personal experience and based on the growth of the network you're listening to right now, that if you have banking needs, call our friends at Emprise Bank. We've worked with so many great people there over the years, from Vicky and Aggie to Andrea, Lori, Jackie, Deb, and Aaron, and not to mention so many others that not just supported KC Sports Network, but supported our KCSN Foundation as well. But the best thing that I know is that if I have a question or a problem, no matter how dumb the question is, I know who I'm going to call and who I'm going to talk to. And I know that I'm getting an answer from someone that I can trust. And I know that person is there to help us. That's why Emprise Bank has always been and continues to be our partner in Possible. And they can be yours too. You just have to reach out. If you have a banking need, whether it's business or personal, hit me up. I will connect you directly with the same people that have helped us build KCSN. And that's our friends at Emprise Bank.
Folks, nothing beats hanging out with the boys on a hot summer day and watching some baseball. And the simplest way that you all can get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It is crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. And the best part is, Pick 6 is available right here in Missouri. Don't miss out on the fun. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6, and right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and then use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Bonus picks expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Continuing on with the front 7, 8, 6, whatever it is that you want to consider it in today's college football. The linebackers are next, and this is going to be our top storyline, brought to you by our friends at Alenco. For all your home remodeling needs, make sure to go to ALENCOhome.com, AlencoHome.com, to get hooked up with them. Great K-State folks supporting us here for another season, and we are very happy to have them back on board. But Austin Romaine is the headliner here. Lettuce, as his teammates affectionately call him, as we found out down in Frisco. But man, I mean, Cole, you were telling me beforehand, and obviously those of you who listened to the podcast this week have heard he's top 50 on PFF's big board in terms of the NFL draft. Many have him labeled as an All-American, certainly first team All Big 12 caliber player who really burst onto the scene as a true freshman a couple of years ago. The question has been, and some of the pushback, I think, from some folks has been like, okay, look, I mean, I knew he was a good player. Is he All-American level player? And does K-State need him to be an All-American level player for the defense to go where you need it to go?
Look, I think he is. I don't know if I would stretch it to All-American. I guess I would say I think he's a first-team All-Conference linebacker, which I think is plenty good enough for what this Kansas State team needs. And look, Dalton Wasserman of the Pro Football Focus College Football Show, who we had on 3-Mall that you just alluded to, John, they have Austin Romaine 47th on their big board for the 2026 NFL draft, which would be a mid-second round pick. And they also have him at Pro Football Focus as the best player in the Big 12 on the defensive side of the football coming back for the 2025 season. So PFF obviously incredibly high on him. He graded, I think, as one of the top 2 Power 4 linebackers in college football last year. Phenomenal against the run. Now, he did have some missed tackles when you look at how they grade him out. But outside of that, just really good. And look, he helped lead and spearhead a run defense that took a big jump last year. 2023, K-State gave up 5.1 yards per carry. That was 116th in the country, and that was 15th at the Big 12. And in 2024, K-State 3.8 yards per carry, number 32 nationally, and number 4 in the Big 12. And a large part of that can be attributed to Romaine and just how good he is at stopping the run. And, he's a really smart kid, a really intelligent, high-level, high IQ guy that had a ton of Ivy League offers coming out of high school. Those were really the bulk of his offers coming out of high school because he was the lowest-ranked recruit in K-State's recruiting class that year just a couple of years ago, and he continues to grow, evolve, and I think he's a first-team All-Big 12 type player for Kansas State's defense, and you love having a guy right in the middle of that defense at middle linebacker with the leadership qualities and tangibles and being one of your best players on that side of the ball.
I think it's fair to say All-American consideration. Look, something I really liked when we spoke to Steve Stannard earlier this week, the linebackers coach at K-State, was that he's turned into an alpha type dog on that defense. And I actually wrote that not long ago at K-State Online as one of our, insider information pieces, is like, he now has some swagger, some like cockiness, an understanding that he's this good now. And everyone knows I talk about how confidence and all those things can play an immense factor in one's performance. A guy that's already as good as he is, now he realizes that he's that good. That's only going to lift his game even more. And I guess I would say Austin Romaine's like one of the more safer players. Like there's some players year in and year out where you probably think, yeah, I could see them maybe underachieving or something happen where they don't reach their expectations. Austin Romaine, just being the type of dude that he is from a personality standpoint, a program guy, just hard-nosed. I don't think there's a world where he actually underachieves his expectations. So just based off that, I think that's all American consideration, because if that's basically saying all Big 12 is the floor.
And you got to really appreciate what he did a couple of years ago with kind of like filling the power vacuum, so to speak, in the linebacking core left by Jake Clifton, right? Who was another guy who burst onto the scene as a young player. And it was tough when all of a sudden he leaves, obviously for important purpose, for a mission, but that left a hole there that was filled by Austin Romaine. Rest of the linebacking core, I mean, look, Desmond Purnell has been a guy who's earned some all Big 12 recognition at points throughout his career. Now a senior, been around a long time. And I think a lot of people will look toward Gabe Powers as somebody that they need to make a pretty big impact. Junior transfer from Ohio State. And when you transfer from Ohio State, you're going to garner a lot of attention. How you feeling about the linebacking core around Austin Romaine? Because we can debate Romaine, has the hype gotten too crazy, whatever. The real question is like what is going to fill in around him. I think many were disappointed in at least like the back half of Desmond Purnell's year last year, for instance.
I think Desmond Purnell at his best is a really good football player and a very valuable part of the K-State defense, but they need to be mindful of his snap count, because when it hits a certain point, then you see some of that performance start to dip a little bit. And I think that's what happened last year. So with that being known, I think Gabe Powers does become pretty important here, assuming that that's the backup for Desmond Purnell. And Gabe Powers is going to play a good amount this year. Some of the linebacker spots are probably a little bit to be determined, at least on our end. But I think, if you get Purnell out there for 60 to 65% of the snaps and Gabe Powers the other 30 to 35%, I feel really good about that spot. Especially with another thing that Stannard said, and what we hear behind the scenes is Gabe Powers is probably that next best linebacker after Romaine and Purnell. And really, that's best case scenario. That's what you wanted to hear if you're a Kansas State fan, that Gabe Powers is that next guy.
Yeah, the Ohio State transfer, highly coveted coming out of high school, obviously has the recruiting pedigree to his name, just couldn't get on the field much with the loaded Ohio State defense. So, yeah, hopefully he can be that third guy. Now, the question for me isn't so much Gabe Powers or Des Purnell, DY, or Austin Romaine. And again, the shift to the 4-2-5 helps alleviate some of this concern, right? But who's that fourth guy? Like, is Gabe Powers backing up both Austin Romaine and Des Purnell because they don't feel comfortable with a fourth guy? They brought in Ralph Ortiz, a Division II transfer.
The fourth guy is by Rex Van Wy. I think that's
all right. Okay. And do we think Rex Van Wy can make that jump? A guy that a couple years ago they landed, young JUCO player. Felt like they were high.
I mean, it's fair to question just how good Rex Van Wy can be, but if he's your fourth linebacker, I don't think that's an atrocious thing. If your fourth linebacker's played as much football as he already has, that's probably kind of a blessing.
He did get a decent number of snaps last year, and look, I'll be honest, I just blinked on Rex Van Wy until you brought his name up because I was thinking about Bo Palmer, and I'm like, he's coming off an ACL tear. He's had multiple injuries.
Yeah, we're probably in wait-and-see mode on both Bo Palmer and Asa Newsome.
Yeah. So you got two linebackers there that are, probably.
But if you need six linebackers in a 4-2-5, something else went wrong.
Yeah. And then obviously they like a lot of the true freshmen that are coming in, but you don't want to have to rely on a true freshman early in the year, especially. So.
Well, that was going to be my question, Cole. Is it Darian Whitaker, somebody that could late in the year give you some help and following this? I mean, that's been the pattern lately, right? Jay Clifton, Austin Romaine, you've had guys as true freshmen be able to come in and make an impact sooner than people anticipated.
And DY, you've heard buzz on Whitaker really for quite some time. Like, what do you think of that?
I wouldn't want him playing a lot as a true freshman. I mean, as good as Austin Romaine is, he was a train wreck, at times as a true freshman. So you'd rather not play him.
But Romaine had to play more than what you ideally would have wanted to.
Yeah, but for a Big 12 championship contending team, I think you're asking for mistakes that can lose games by putting true freshmen in a linebacker.
Okay. Well, sprinkling him in, hopefully, I think. And I don't, is best case scenario here. Let's put it this way. Is best case scenario Asa Newsome has like a Taylor Poitier-esque recovery and has a nice career after his couple of knee surgeries, and he is the guy that can, by the end of the year, be your fourth linebacker?
Yeah, maybe. It took Taylor Poitier some time, though.
It did.
So.
It did.
When did Ace's injury occurred in late October against KU?
It was a KU game. Yeah.
It just sucks for Asa Newsome, multiple knee injuries back-to-back years because, I mean, guys, he was maybe my second or third favorite recruit in the recruiting class with Avery Johnson. I just loved his film, his athleticism, the traits he has. He's an incredibly humble and really intelligent kid, really neat kid, and just sucks that he's had to go through this. And I just don't know if he'll ever be able to get to the level that he probably had the full potential of after these multiple knee injuries. Probably not realistic, but hopefully he can bounce back and be a guy that can contribute.
Yeah. Have we heard anything on Ralph Ortiz? The reason for optimism there yet?
Probably in a wait and see mode. I would say maybe he becomes one of your better special teams guys, especially if you don't have Bill Palmer out there on special teams, who's been kind of one of the leaders and mainstays in that phase. So, and I think Darian Whitaker is going to be one of your special teams guys too. Probably that's probably where he's going to make his butter this year.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, the defensive backfield is where there are. I would compare it in a lot of ways to the defensive line, right? You've got a lot of talent and guys that seem to have potential, but they need to bust through and actually live up to that this year.
Except the defensive line's played a little bit. Some of these guys in the secondary haven't played.
Or haven't played at K-State because you have some transfers.
Cheaty had over 200 snaps last year, I think. So that's different than some of these guys in the secondary.
Well, VJ Payne is one that they're going to be relying on quite a bit because of the experience that he does have. Gunnar Maldonado, I guess we can start at safety since I'm already drifting there. Gunnar Maldonado was one of my absolute favorite pulls out of the transfer portal who had a fantastic 2023. You can ask Jackson Arnold in Oklahoma about that in the Alamo Bowl, but he had a great 2023 for Arizona, and then he had a serious injury last year. coming back from that, maybe a tad bit slower than hoped, but I think still going to be ready to go by the time the season starts. If Maldonado is healthy and you've got VJ Payne, Gunnar Maldonado on the back end of that defense, I mean, I start to feel pretty good. Plus, I think safety is just a pretty loaded room, at least with talent and potential.
Yeah, and this is actually a spot on the field where you might be able to see a true freshman play a good amount of football this year for Kansas State and Logan Bartley too. So that's something to consider. I still have question marks on Gunnar Maldonado. I've said it all along. If he's in top form, where he peaked performance-wise at Arizona, then this Kansas State defense has a chance to be pretty spicy. If not, then you have to find other alternatives of how to get there. And hearing that he was supposed to be cleared on August 1st, I don't know if he was or not. He probably was. I think he was. On August 1st is a good sign. That's 22 days ahead of the game. So you kind of start to maybe track towards that way. But then, we went to the open practice on Tuesday and I didn't see him out there. So, and maybe he got out there later after we left. That could have transpired too. I haven't really heard any whispers about what's going on or anything. Hopefully it's a nothing burger at this point.
Yeah. To be fair, let me be fair on that, because I think I said, hey, maybe a little bit slower coming back. Yeah, the timetable was perhaps sped up, and then I was going off of your observation of practice. We're operating with the info that we have on that. Not totally sure where that's at, but it's worthy of bringing up. And hey, maybe another newcomer, Quay Moss, can be somebody that really explodes too, because it sounds like the coaching staff definitely likes him.
Yeah, he'll start at nickel. And with Gunnar, it could be nothing, or there could be something. I really don't know.
And you're hearing quite a bit of buzz on Quay Moss, right?
Quay
the Division
Moss,
II transfer.
Yeah, turned it on in the last week, quite a bit. Like, that's a guy that they're starting to get real excited about, I believe. And again, with that scheme change, you're talking about a nickel being introduced back into the defense, and that's what he'll play.
Yeah, transferring from the Division II level from West Georgia, a guy that was really graded out well, but there's always the question of how they'll do when they adjust. And a guy that committed to K-State as he was leaving Nebraska's campus that they really wanted.
The interesting thing is, I know we all say D2 transfer but West Georgia actually entered FCS last year, and that was the 1 year he played. So we actually played at FCS, which that really becomes no different than Marquis Siegel or Reggie Stubblefield.
Okay, that's a good call out. And Gunnar Maldonado, look, 31 career starts, two-time captain at Arizona, finished his Arizona career with 175 tackles, 4 interceptions, 8 passes defended, 6 forced fumbles. Saw his PFF grade go from 50.9 in 2022 to 77.1 in 2023. His tackling grade rose from 38.1 to 76.4. His tackling percentage, missed tackle percentage dropped 50%. I read a nice article from the Arizona Daily Star, which spoke to Kleiman after K-State landed Maldonado, and said Kleiman was one of the first people he called Maldonado as soon as he entered the portal. And Kleiman said, quote, "I've watched enough crossover tape when we played different teams, and at Arizona, that kid always showed up." Said he has the it factor as well. And one thing Kleiman had said that I hadn't heard before is that Arizona had to shift their defense around when they came to Manhattan last year. Because they had an injury at another position on the back end of their defense. And so Maldonado had to move spots on the defense. And so Kleiman said they picked apart the area that Maldonado moved from because he's such a good player, and they were able to expose the kid who replaced him as they slid Maldonado over. One call out, October 5th was when he tore his ACL. He did it against Texas Tech, 5th game of the year last year. So, you're looking at right now as we record here today, about 10 months removed from the time he had the ACL tear, though I think the surgery he didn't have for a little while immediately after that ACL tear. So it's a question, but like, he's a leader on the back end of the defense. You want him on the field, because if you can get him on the field, not only is he a talented player, guys, but you're talking about VJ Payne going into his 4th year of playing and taking on those leadership intangibles, and then having a guy like Maldonado. Look at what happened last year with the back end of that K-State defense. How many communication errors were there and assignment errors? If you can have a couple guys that are really experienced players that can help communicate and alleviate some of that, especially with as young as you are at corner, that's a boost.
A lot is going. It's weird, but a lot is going to rely on Gunnar Maldonado being healthy.
Yeah, man, that Tulane game still gives me nightmares when you talk about secondary miscommunication. That was
that and Jordan Riley not finding the ball on that one touchdown, which was a terrible throw, and he could have intercepted if he just had his eyes up.
Cole said, pretty young at corner. We'll talk about the corners next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Okay, lots of names here. There are certainly some transfers. There are guys like Zayshawn Rich, gotten their feet wet. Donovan McIntosh, one of the absolute fastest players in the program. You are looking at perhaps Jaden Rowe, Amarian Fortenberry, transfers to come in and give you something as well. Justice Clemens has been around. What's your overall synopsis right now on the cornerback room, DY?
Yeah, if pressed to name stars, I would say it's probably going to be Zayshawn Rich and Donovan McIntosh, two guys that, quite frankly, probably both have NFL upside, but they're going to make plays this year that probably have your jaw on the ground in terms of performance, just like Zayshawn Rich did in the bowl game when he played Rutgers in the Rape Bowl. There's also going to be times where they probably make you pull your hair out, just like Zayshawn Rich did at times against Rutgers in the Rape Bowl. So when you have guys that talented, but that inexperienced at the same time, they're going to wow you, and they're going to probably frustrate you a little bit too.
Zayshawn Rich, bold take for me, will be a second-team All-Big 12 player in 2025. So, look, I think on Bosco's Boys, John, you mentioned I was on the show recently. They asked me to pick, I can't remember what was the exact phrasing, MVP of the defense, and I tried not to go with the obvious of like Austin Romaine or BJ Payne. And I took Zayshawn Rich. I think he's got the talent to be it. There's going to be a growth pattern that goes on there and evolution and experience as that continues on. But I think he's a guy that can be a hell of a player. I mean, DY heard about him from day one last year as a guy that they weren't going to be able to keep off the field. And the one thing I really liked about Zayshawn Rich, like, yeah, he got burnt a couple times in the bowl game against Rutgers, but then in the second half of that game, like, he shows me he's got the mental mindset to not let that weigh on him, because he jumped back and made some big plays in the secondary in the second half against Rutgers. And he was on the field late against Colorado too, right? Making a couple big plays in Boulder with some of the injuries they had. So I like Rich. McIntosh is a guy that's really fast, 23 miles per hour, top 4 fastest player on the team. And you couple that with his 6'3" size and length. I mean, he could be an NFL Julius Brents type if he reaches his ceiling. He's going into his third year. He was a top 500 recruit nationally coming out of high school. Nebraska wanted him. Arkansas wanted him. K-State was able to land him. He's from the St. Louis area. I'm really excited to see what he can be. He got a few snaps last year, some in garbage time, and then obviously against Rutgers, at one point it was him and Rich on the field in the second half, and McIntosh made a couple plays as well. So there's going to be mistakes that they make, but from a sheer talent perspective and length, et cetera, athleticism, they could be a pretty darn good tandem come the end of the year.
Yeah, some growing pains, and this is where, look, Iowa's this week 0 game, man. Iowa State's bringing in transfer receivers, so you're also projecting with them, bringing in an East Carolina and a UCF transfer. Like, how are those guys going to fit in? Chase Soul and Xavier Townsend, I believe, are the names there.
Yeah,
so I think Soul's going to be pretty solid for them. I think he's got a chance, but it's funny. Remember I said that this team was built for 2025 last year? I think it is, but the corner room's kind of built for 26. That's kind of a little bit of a thing, but.
Well, I think some of the hope. Well, it's not like they didn't go to the transfer portal. They get Jaden Rowe, 6'1", 227, Amarian Fortenberry, 5'10", $178. Maybe has been a little bit banged up, Fortenberry, throughout camp so far, which is unfortunate. And Jaden Rowe is the guy that everybody said, like, man, dude, that guy looks the part for sure, physical specimen. Where's your optimism on him significantly contributing?
I think he plays a good amount. I think he'll be that first reserve corner off the bench at the moment. Maybe he can, go on a little bit of a run here and claim a starting job. I tend to think that might even be better to maybe get one of the older guys, even though he hasn't played a bunch either, out there that's maybe a little bit less mistake prone. But you're probably going to have to live and die with that a little bit regardless. But, Jaden Rowe, in terms of just physical stature, he'll probably remind people a little bit of Julius Brents.
Yeah, I mean, Wyatt Thompson said he reminds him of a Ford F-150 truck when he sees him in person when we had him on the show. So, he's got the size, the physicality. Look, they got to be better, though, and this is where you become a little bit concerned because they had more experience returning in the secondary last year. In fact, I think we probably dubbed their safety room as the best or second best in the Big 12. I took some heat from that from friends after they struggled early in the year last year. But guys, from a pass efficiency defensive perspective, 2023, K-State ranked 17th in the country and number 1 in the Big 12. 2022, 32nd in the country, number 1 in the Big 12. 2024, 128.7 pass efficiency defense, number 58 in the country, number 8 in the Big 12, second worst in the Chris Kleiman era. So they got to be better there. 7 yards per pass attempt allowed, number 52 nationally. They took a step back there when it comes to the defense. And the one area that they have to clean up, and I'm just not sure it's going to be cleaned up, guys, is explosive plays allowed on the back end of that defense. It was a huge problem in 2023. They allowed 11 plays of 50-plus yards, ranking 118th in the country. Only 9 teams allowed more, 127th in plays of 60 yards or more that season as well. 57 plays of 20 yards or more, 71st nationally. Well, last year in 2024, K-State 126th in the country and explosive plays allowed overall, which was 15th in the Big 12. There was only 7 or 8 teams that were worse. 59 plays allowed of 20 or more yards, 86 nationally, number 10 in the Big 12. And when you boil it down to passing explosives, more specifically, 128th in the country and dead last in the Big 12 in passing explosives allowed, 107th nationally. Now, I don't consider 10-plus yard passes explosive necessarily, but 123 of those allowed last year, which was 107th in the country. Passes of 20-plus yards, 40, ranked 74th in the nation, 83rd in the nation in passing plays of 40 yards or more, et cetera. So they got to clean that up because the rushing explosives, way better. They were 6th in the country, or they only allowed two rushes of 40-plus yards. I was top 25 in the country. They were top 30 in the country of rushes allowed of 10-plus yards.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, Van Malone and Joe Klanderman have their work cut out for them this year in the secondary.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, we're talking about all this inexperience, and they have breaking in 4 new starters. And I get you'd rather have NFL guys than not. So Jacob Parrish and Marquise Siegel, you wish you still had them. But turning over a room that wasn't exactly great isn't like the worst thing in the world either.
Yeah. And we talk about the D-line being a strength potentially. They're going to have to get after the quarterback, and maybe they can alleviate some of the pressure that secondary faces. And hopefully by the end of the year, that secondary is forcing some turnovers, and that D-line's creating some mistakes and turnovers as well. Because, again, we've talked about it on the show, but 1.3 turnovers per game forced last year, 80th in the nation, number 11 in the Big 12. 2023, they forced 1.9 per game. That was top 10 in the country and second in the Big 12. And in 2022, they were top 20 in the country with 1.8 turnovers forced per game and number 1 in the Big 12. So top 2 in the Big 12 in 2022, 2023, fell to number 11 in takeaways per game last year. So have to be better there. As a result, K-State fell drastically in turnover margin to 58th in the country and 7th in the Big 12 when they led the Big 12 and were top 10 nationally in turnover margin per game in 2022 and 23.
Good news, I guess. Final thought here, thinking about Iowa State, that first game of the year, at least, as we've mentioned multiple times, like they're going to be breaking in some new faces with their passing game too. So
yeah, I mean, Rocco Beck, this will be his 3rd year starting, so he clearly is capable of picking apart an inexperienced.
Well, I heard Cole, an unnamed host on Bosco's Boys said that Rocco Beck was like the most overrated player in the Big 12. So
one most likely to take a step back this year.
Well, no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, when you're talking about a 3rd year starter, he's plenty capable on his own, probably, of picking apart a young secondary, an inexperienced secondary that's going to have combined less than 20 starts maybe back there. So he's plenty capable. His challenge is, does he have wide receivers that he can rely on, obviously? And they don't have a great backfield. Obviously, you talk about Abu Sama, who's one of the 2 that they'll count on, but he's never really did anything to anyone besides K-State. So that's interesting. They're always going to have a pretty good offensive line under Matt Campbell. That's one of his strengths as a coach.
Yeah.
Look, one of their strengths is tight ends, Gabe Burkle, Ben Brahmer, so it'll be interesting how K-State's able to cover up those guys from a wide receiver. Look, John, Dalton Wasserman at PFF, I asked him, because you remember the Iowa State game in Manhattan, Rocco Beck got away with multiple turnovers and potential mistakes. Wasserman had him at 3 turnover-worthy plays that he got away with against Kansas State, and he had 20 turnover-worthy plays in 2024 overall. So he got away with a lot of things, and that was with 2,000-yard receivers and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. John, I know you got to run, so I'll let you bounce, and I'll actually just wrap this up. You can go ahead and run out of here, and I'll throw a couple more things in here with DY, and then we'll wrap this show up. So,
all right. See
you later. See you later, John. All right. So, I mean, that's where I'm kind of at, DY, with Rocco Beck, is like, I think he got away with quite a bit last year. I felt like he took a little bit. I think we've talked about it. Like, his completion percentage dropped 3% last year. His pass efficiency rating dropped 12 points. And now he's lost 2,000 wide receivers.
In his defense, I'll say it's because they don't have a run game.
Yeah. I mean, Carson Hansen doesn't strike a ton of fear into you.
And Abu Sama will to K-State fans because of what happened in that snow game, but he hasn't done much outside of that game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair to point out. And look, Chase Soul comes in from East Carolina. You guys mentioned him. He had about 620 to 670 yards each of the last two seasons.
I think they're pretty bullish on him, though. It sounds like he's like maybe their Jerron Tibbs kind of guy they brought in. They're like, oh, this guy might be actually pretty good. I'm hearing that. A conversation I had with someone in the last 48 hours about this Iowa State game too. And there is that the sentiment because they've won 3 of the last 4. And then you can even go back further than that if you want to include the 2020 game, but not many of us do that. Matt Campbell owns Chris Kleiman, and 3 out of 4 wins is impressive, but it also the time that game is played near, which has been at the end of the season many times, when teams no longer, it's a different era of college football, and this is not even an excuse, but I think it's something to consider. It doesn't excuse 3 out of 4 losses to Iowa State, but you get to that final game, if you're no longer in the Big 12 hunt, you just have less to play for than the other guy, because Iowa State was in contention for the Big 12 championship each time, or 2 of those times.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out. Both matchups against Iowa State, K-State was just on the heels of losing, controlling their destiny, right? Yep. 2023, the snow game, you consider all those factors, that there just really wasn't. I felt it from a fan standpoint.
Yeah, that snow game, it just looked like the air was out of that team because they had the deflating realization that they were no longer in the Big 12 title race. I mean, I think that's why you had the Will Lee, basically, no effort play. Yeah. And then last year was similar. Iowa State's playing for a spot in the Big 12 championship. K-State's out of it because they lost to Arizona State and Houston.
No, there's no doubt that was a tough spot to go into last year with everything on the line for the Cyclones and K-State going into the road into a frenzied atmosphere. So that was a tough spot. I know we're not trying to make excuses because
I'm not making excuses. Yeah, I'm not making any excuses, but I think from ever since the advent of maybe the 12-team playoff and other things too, you have guys opting out of bowl games all the time now. I think from 2023 on, your last 2 games of a season are often dictated by if you're in the hunt or not.
Yeah, DY, I pulled these numbers last night because I was looking at K-State and their 4 losses last year. K-State held Iowa State last year to 13 of 36 passing, 3.8 yards per pass, 4 of 16 on third downs, 324 yards on 79 plays, a season worst 4.1 yards per play.
You gotta have a run. You have to have a run game in this area of the country in November.
Yeah,
you do, because it's harder to throw in November and December in this part of the country because of the temperature and the weather conditions. And like I said, if Iowa State didn't have a run game, then they become pretty one-dimensional, and that's why you're probably looking at a 13 of 36 number.
Yep. DY, I got to throw out a couple more numbers only because I pulled them, and I need to feel like I didn't completely waste my time. So give me 60 seconds here to throw it out. K-State in 2024, 2.09 points per drive, 51st in the country, number 7 in the Big 12. It was the highest points per drive allowed in the Kleiman era, minus the pandemic season. And then you've heard me talk about field position for K-State, and I know it's probably getting old, but the average starting distance of opponents to the end zone last year for K-State was 69 yards, which was ranked 116th nationally. In other words, the average starting field position was the opponent 31 for the opponent for when they were facing K-State's defense. The opponent's percentage of drives 80 yards or more from the end zone where they started, 14%, 114th in the country, and starting 60 yards or less from the end zone, almost 20% of K-State's opponents started beyond the 40-yard line, which was number 98th in the country. I went back and looked in K-State's 4 losses last year. K-State's opponents' average starting field position was as follows. BYU, average drive started on its own 43. Houston, average drive started on its own 39. Iowa State started on its own 39. Arizona State started on its own 32 on average. 16 of the 43 drives in those 4 losses started 60 yards or less from K-State's end zone. That's 37%.
And I think folks will be like special teams, which it played a part. But I'll be honest, I think the offense might have been even more responsible.
Absolutely.
From a quantity standpoint.
Yep, absolutely. So I just said 16 of 43 drives, 60 yards or less from K-State's end zone. K-State's offense on the other end of the spectrum, 5 of its 47 drives in those 4 losses started 60 yards or less from the opponent's end zone. So under 11%.
And that's,
K-State,
probably more special teams.
Yeah. K-State's offensive starting field position in those 4 losses, their own 20 against BYU on average. That's a 23-yard difference from what BYU's starting field position was. Houston, K-State started on its own 26 on average. It's a 13-yard differential from Houston's starting field position. Arizona State, K-State started on average on its own 25 offensively, 7-yard differential from ASU. And Iowa State, K-State started on its own 25, a 14-yard differential compared to the Cyclones. If you boil it down even more, 17 of K-State's 47 drives offensively started 80 yards or more from the end zone in those losses. Only 5 of 43 or 11% of K-State's opponents' drives started 80 yards or more out. And you could go even farther, 85 yards plus from the end zone. K-State had 11 of 47 drives in those games. They had to drive 85 yards for a touchdown. That's 23% of their total drives in those games. Only 1 of the opponent's 43 drives had to go 85 yards or more. So I'm throwing that out there. People are like, why are you talking about that? Well, because the defense got put in a lot of bad spots last year. Like if you look at the losses, they gave up 19 of 52 on third downs combined in the 4 losses, 36%. And they only gave up 4.75 yards per play in those 4 losses. Now the yards per play dips, right? Because there was less area of field to have big plays, which is why K-State had the lowest yards per play allowed last year, largely at 5.3 in the Kleiman era, excluding the pandemic season, because
also probably why they broke the record on yards per play for offense.
You're right. That's very true. Because like you look at red zone numbers too, like part of the thing last year, we talked about it on the offensive side of the ball. And then you look at it on the defensive side, K-State red zone defense, 2023, they allowed touchdowns on 13 of 33 red zone trips. 39% red zone touchdown rate was the second best in college football. Well, last year, 25 touchdowns and 42 red zone attempts allowed. Almost 60%. That ranked 67th nationally by K-State's defense. So that's a 20% jump in what used to be field goals the year before turned into touchdowns. And you lost multiple games pretty close. So anyways, I got to run now, DY, but I had to throw those in. So you got anything to add before we wrap? All right. We are going to have a ton of coverage coming your way as we gear up for the Iowa State game. And we're going to do our schedule break down every game in depth next week on the channel. So be sure to check it out. Be sure to subscribe if you don't already do so on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. If that's your choice, make sure you leave us a rating if you would. That anything would help us. And again, link in the description in the chat for the Holiday Distillery watch party for the Iowa State game on August 23rd. Go check it out. Join us there. We're going to have a ton of fun. Appreciate our friends at Holiday Distillery, and hit up Elenco for all of your home improvement and remodeling needs. Appreciate DY, appreciate John and Nick Springer behind the scenes producing the show. Thank you for listening to another episode of 3 Mall.